Welcome back to Mentor Nation, the podcast for entrepreneurs looking for real mentorship, real strategies, and real stories so that you can go out and build your dreams. I'm your host, John Abbas, and it's time for another episode, so buckle your seatbelt and let's go. Hey guys, welcome to the show. John Abbas here, excited to introduce you to an amazing guest, Ayla Kress. Ayla is an entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, and is just an incredibly brilliant human being that is just so wise for her age. She is only 25 years old and already has some really incredible accolades. She's been voted the top 30 music moguls in the making under age 30. Her company, Brain Candy Management, has done some amazing work producing some major music talent here in Nashville. And, I'm excited because, we have interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs on this podcast, many who came from nothing, grew up in the ghetto, immigrated here speaking no English, and then went on to become successful, or just grew up in an environment that was not conducive to success. But one of the things that I've personally always wondered, especially, I grew up in a really poor family, and so one of the things that I've always wondered is, what is it like growing up in a family full of extremely successful entrepreneurs? What philosophies and mindsets do they teach their kids that give them the confidence and the courage to do really incredible things at a young age? I've always been fascinated by people like Ben Stiller, Anderson Cooper, Enrique Iglesias, because although they had really successful parents, they went off and they forged their own path. They created their own success using the principles that they learned. And so Ayla is no different. In the interview today, she shares the values that she learned growing up that allowed her to become an independent, self-made entrepreneur in her teens. We talk about environment, why she decided to go off on her own instead of just joining the family business, which would have been the easy choice. And she just gives some great practical advice on becoming an entrepreneur, how she makes her decisions, and on finding mentorship. As you'll see in this interview, she is just wise beyond her years, and I really enjoyed this interview, and I hope you will too. Without further ado, Ayla Kress. All right. Ayla, welcome to the Mentor Nation podcast. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So this is fortunate because we are not doing this through audio. I'm actually here in your place. And just for the audience listening, just to give them a little context of you, you are 25 years old. We're sitting in your gigantic 3-story home on top of a mountain. I won't say where in Tennessee, but you are a venture capitalist and you're 25. So when most people are trying to find an intern level job, you are investing in companies. And I'm excited to dive into that. But thank you for being on the show. It's awesome to have you.
Excited.
So I want to start with a little bit about your background. I know that you've grown up in a house full of serial entrepreneurs, and I can't wait to figure out what that's like. My family, we were on welfare growing up, so I had to learn the mindsets and the skill sets from all of these other people. But, you were born into it. And I just think that's so exciting because I want to distill what you learned, from a young age that shaped you into who you are today. So what was that like just growing up in a family full of entrepreneurs?
It was a very interesting and curious environment. There was never the feeling that you couldn't do anything. No matter what your dreams were, your family, your friends always supported you. And there was always a hunger to learn. My parents were both very curious people, very bright people, were always continuing to learn. And my parents both came from entrepreneurial families as well, but two different types. My mother grew up in a very small, lower class, also on welfare, didn't have anything. She worked her butt off cleaning schools growing up to pay for her private school tuition. Her mother was a filmmaker and an artist and a single mother. Her father had fought in Vietnam. And so she grew up in a very entrepreneurial family that they worked hard, and they worked hard for every dime they did. And my dad, on the other side, grew up in a very more traditional corporate entrepreneurial family. His grandfather had started a business without 2 pennies to his name and went through a lot of different processes there as well, learning the tricks of the trade. So big influences on both sides in two very different environments and type of entrepreneurial influence as well.
Now, was it fun or was it high stress? Because I have 3 daughters and I want them to grow up and be entrepreneurs. And, I didn't grow up in that. So I'm thinking like, man, do I just make them sell lemonade like outside the house? Like I want to groom them, but do I pay them to read books? Like, so kind of what was the environment like? Did they involve you in the family business from early on?
In ways. My parents were also, I think they encouraged entrepreneurship by simply demanding that my sister and I stand on our own 2 feet. If I wanted a video game or if I wanted a new toy, I didn't get an allowance. I was expected to do chores and help around the house because guess what? My parents put food on the table for me and they put a roof over the house. So the least I could do was wash the dishes. So I didn't get an allowance growing up. I knew people that got paid for their grades. So that was never a thing in our household. The way you got money was, hey, Mom, I see the windows haven't been cleaned recently. I'll clean windows for $10 an hour and I'll clean the entire house of windows for like $50. But hey, that's a video game. And so that was how my parents maybe accidentally inspired entrepreneurship by just demanding that their kids stand on their own. If you want something, you have to work for it. That was instilled in us from day one. They did involve us in their multiple family businesses growing up. My dad had small coffee shops that he had started with his friends or small businesses kind of along those lines, really mom and pop shops. And we would go in and I would be there while my dad was dealing with an emergency or just kind of more day-to-day things. But also my father is a philanthropist and ran a nonprofit foundation growing up. So we attended, my father and I and my mother especially, my sister kind of was old enough to be able to stay home and opt out of this, but I attended a lot of galas and events. My mother was the president of the Children's Museum growing up, and so she would do fundraising all the time, nonprofit fundraising, and they would essentially bring me on as, well, we're trying to raise money for the Children's Museum. Look at this child. She needs a place to play and learn. So they kind of used me as like
guinea pig,
firsthand evidence. Yeah, like the guinea pig. They're like, this is our sales ploy. So I really got to learn, and it didn't click how much I was learning when I was sitting in these meetings, but I really got to learn how to ask for money that people were never going to get back, which came into play later in life when I was working for the University of Wisconsin-Madison, fundraising for the festival, the music festival there. So I did kind of get introduced in a roundabout way to the business and learned a lot of tricks and trades that I think a lot of people don't get to learn because not often are you the kid in a nonprofit fundraising meeting.
Right.
That's not normal.
That's right. So what was your first business? Like, did you have like a little side hustle when you were like 8 or 9 or what was the first thing that you did to make money on your own?
Oh, wow. So my best friend growing up, Kendall, lived through the woods. And so we had every different type of business. We made perfume for a while. We had our window washing service.
Oh, before you move on. So perfume, is it true? And I've heard this. Is it true that they use whale vomit to actually, that's what gives perfume its like great smell?
I cannot comment on that. We were definitely not making perfume like other people were probably making perfume. It was more, right. Well, essential oil and maybe some rose water and lemon. It was a very homegrown, nothing like some of the entrepreneurs that you see who are young and who are gracing the stages of Shark Tank or anything like that. It was very mom and pop. Nothing was legal. Don't tell the Irish about this one.
They wouldn't listen to a podcast like this anyway.
Yeah. But so we had everything from just offering little services, washing windows. We made some perfume for a bit. I did painting. I did a lot of photography. Those were kind of my very first few businesses, and then transitioned into kind of all of my businesses being involved in music and events once I got older. Like once I got to high school, that was my thing.
So did your parents, were they hoping that you would want to go in line with the family business, or did they encourage you to like forge your own path? Like what was kind of the expectation?
I think in part they hoped I would. And I think maybe there's still some hope that I might move back northern Wisconsin and maybe work at a paper company or a small brewery or something along those lines. But Nashville is wonderful, so I don't think that's happening anytime soon. But my parents always knew that I had dreams, and my dad, I think this is a compliment, kind of. He would always say, if Ayla has an idea, either help her or get out of her way. So I think they knew that when I really wanted to go into music, which we were a extremely musically oriented household. There was always a radio on. The CD changer was the first piece of equipment that I knew how to use. Like, I knew how to use a receiver and all of those gizmos and gadgets before I could make myself my own breakfast, kind of thing. So we grew up in a very musically oriented household. So I think my parents are quite excited and proud of the path that I've chosen and that I'm going down.
That's awesome. Can't make a waffle, but you can edit and and record a soundtrack. So now,
to clarify, I can cook very well now.
Oh, that's perfect. That's a really, really good skill, especially. We do HelloFresh at our household, which is, I mean, it's kind of cooking, but it's
tasty and convenient.
so
though.
good.
Oh,
I'll send you a free. Absolutely. So did you want to be a musician, or did you always want to be on like the business side of it?
I always knew that I was probably going to fall on the business side. My grandfather was a poet, so I grew up writing poetry, but I'm tone deaf as shit. I can record a singer, but I don't really sing myself. My friend group of audio engineers loves the weird sounds that I can make with my voice and different things like that, but singing was never it. I played piano classically for 12 years, but I wanted to be solving problems. I liked the idea of being involved in business.
That's awesome. Yeah, Ong Lee, who big famous director, Crouching Tiger, he always wanted to be an actor. And when he realized that his English was just really shitty, he was like, maybe I'll just shift into directing. And it ended up working out really well. So chances are you're going to be a mogul, and you can always come back to that story. And so I want to talk a little bit about the company that you have now. And, then I want to get into just a lot of the mindsets, because I'm sitting here and I'm just really impressed. I mean, you're 25, you talk like you've been a CEO of a company for 15, 20 years. You are dealing with investors and big names and musicians. So what was the inspiration for Brain Candy? Talk a little bit about how you ended up doing what you're doing now, what it is that you do now, and kind of what led to that.
Well, Brain Candy is a very non-traditional integrated marketing and management firm. So we kind of always say we're a one-stop dream shop for artists and any businesses in the entertainment sector primarily. So if someone wants to come to us and they want to get their business or their website ready for a big launch or a change, we can help them with that. We help them kind of connect with all the freelancers they might need, but we manage the project so that they don't have to herd the cats. Our tagline is going beyond the traditional in everything we do. So we like to think outside the box. We don't like to do traditional marketing of pushing Facebook ads or expenditures there. We like to do guerrilla marketing and take unique approaches there. What got me into Brain Candy and what inspired Brain Candy was my love for entrepreneurship that came from my family, that came from my childhood and wanting to solve problems, and also my love for music, which also came from my childhood.
Right.
You can tell I was pretty influenced by my family. So combining both of those and being able to service my two loves and be in a city that is an epicenter of music, but also entrepreneurship is an amazing blessing.
How did you get the name?
Brain Candy was actually inspired by my audio engineering professor, James Abbott at Syracuse University. He's a Grammy-nominated engineer and an amazing, amazing man. Shout out to you, Abbott. We were sitting in a studio one day, and he was showing me a Neve amplifier, which is a very unique and coveted amp made in Great Britain. They're pretty old. He's one of the 4 people in the world that can actually fix them. He's brilliant. And he goes, Kress, that a lot of people call me by my last name, Kress. He's like, Kress, this is my Brain Candy. I just love it. And my business partner, Tony Chiarella, who I met at grad school at Syracuse, I kind of leaned back, and it's just like someone turned on, not a light bulb, but a freaking floodlight. And I was just blinded by the light. And I was like, that's it. That's it. And then about a month later, I was like, Abbott, I got to admit something. I stole your words, and told him that I was going to start my management company and start my business, which was essentially my thesis project in grad school, and name it after him.
Did he ask for the equity?
No, he didn't. I think he's still flattered. He was, and still is to this day, kind of like that father figure that we got to have at Syracuse. And we spent so much time in the Belfer studios at Syracuse University. So we were always around. We were always working on projects with him. So I think he's just thankful that to be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's so humble.
And it's really interesting that you're saying this, because it seems like you had a lot of breakthroughs. You met a lot of really great people in college. And, it's interesting because I'd say half the entrepreneurs that I interview on here, they're kind of against college. They're all about like, make your own way. You don't need that. It's a waste of time and years. And then the other half, they're like, man, this was so instrumental to my networking and the people. So like, what's kind of your take? I mean, you've went through your bachelor's, your master's, and obviously you're an entrepreneur now and you went for many different things, but what's kind of your opinion on school in general after high school?
I think that it's important to go through a time period in your life where you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. And for most people, that is college. That is going through that transition, getting that degree. Some people can go out into the world and they can learn a trade, or they can go to a trade school, or they have entrepreneurial skills, or maybe a craft like woodworking or painting or something that they can go on and do that. I think college for me served as a time to stand on my own 2 feet, really build my confidence. And I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, go Badgers, on Wisconsin, for my undergrad. I'm a 4th-generation Badger.
I'm going to edit that out. No, I'm kidding.
You better not. I'm a 4th-generation Badger. So I learned a lot at Madison outside of the classroom, and specifically at the Wisconsin Union, which the union's entire purpose is to teach students leadership and life skills outside of the classroom. So that's where I acquired 90% of the music business schools, of the contracting, of the legalese, of most of what I learned and actually apply on my day to day. I learned firsthand in an experience situation, which I was granted access to through my college education. But there are so many different avenues that people can go down to find a mentor, or to find an internship, or some way that they can get involved to learn. I think firsthand experience is the most important thing.
That's really powerful. Next week, I actually am interviewing a lady by the name of Laura Sandifer. She founded Acton Schools. Have you ever heard of Acton?
No.
Acton is a kind of a new generation of schools for younger kids, where a lot of entrepreneurs are sending their kids. It's a completely different methodology. There's actually one here in Nashville, and we're looking to enroll our daughter when she's 5. But Acton is where they help young kids find what their passion is and what they're good at, and teach them entrepreneurial skills at a very early age. And they're booming up. They're opening up these schools everywhere. A lot of really big entrepreneurs are sending their kids there. And so I reached out to her because I'm just so fascinated. I never went to college. I joined the Navy right out of high school. And so I never got that experience. And so it's just from interviewing a lot of people that I realize, what people get out of it, what they don't, other than just a bunch of student loans. So it's really cool to see some of the connections that you've made and just kind of your opinion, because I think that's really powerful. But yeah, I'm interested in how that interview is going to go and just kind of what her take was on that. So you obviously went to college. You have an incredible company. Now, are you also doing venture capital as well? Are you a VC?
Yes, I am. I am a general partner of Scrappy Capital, which is a seed stage focused fund focused on emerging tech hubs.
Awesome. So how do you look at a company? So who taught you that? Obviously VC, you're investing money into businesses. What do you look at when you look at a company and you decide whether you're going to put money into them or not?
I learned a lot of it while learning what to do and what not to do in my undergrad program. I minored in entrepreneurship at the Wisconsin School of Business, which is an amazing sink or swim school kind of thing. You have to work your ass off, and shout out to them for teaching me that. So I learned a lot of how to pitch correctly, of things that were attractive to investors that weren't. And when I went to grad school, I met the now chairman of my board, Sean Brannigan, who is a digital media expert. He is the director of digital media entrepreneurship at Syracuse University, actually. And so he further taught me different ways to vet and find little flags, red flags, things to truly look for. So when I'm looking at seed stage, the most important thing to me is the founder and the team. So when you're super early, you have this idea, which is wonderful. But if you don't have a team that can execute that idea or that can pivot or that can handle stressful situations, the idea is never going to get off the ground. So for us, we really focus on the founder, on making sure that the founder is agile, on making sure that the founder is curious, willing to learn, is willing to take a knee. If a founder is a know-it-all, they'll never get anywhere because you'll never be able to teach them anything. And in addition to that, we obviously take into account the idea. Is there any proprietary technology? Are there any exclusive partnerships? Are there any things? How accessible is the industry? How big are the barriers to entry in the industry? Does it involve any legal involvement or changing legal processes to make this business kind of work? So that's what we look at primarily when it's early seed stage. They're looking for angel investors and still writing convertible notes.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you ever find, and I'm curious, like, have you ever seen that people may not take you serious because you're younger? I mean, obviously you're super well spoken. You carry yourself better than anyone I've ever seen. But I'm just super curious, like, do you ever run into that? Do you ever run in, like, when somebody's pitching you or you're talking with other investors and they're like, oh, how old are you? Like, have you had to deal with any of that?
A lot. So I mentioned before that people call me Kress primarily. I do that for two reasons. It's kind of accidental. It was kind of also suggested to me. I do it to not identify my gender immediately. So I identify as Kress. So if I'm emailing you or if I'm reaching out via someone's introducing me, they'll introduce me as Kress. And so every once in a while, it is interesting to walk into a meeting and you know that person is probably expecting a 45-year-old white male.
That's right.
And a 25-year-old blonde chick shows up and isn't afraid to tell you how it is. It's definitely interesting. I think some people have a hard time swallowing advice from people who are younger than them. I think in general, people are getting better about respecting women and understanding that we're the same, we're humans. But I always tell people that there are people younger than me that know things better than I do. This world is constantly changing. It's constantly innovating. And if you're not bringing on people who are more intelligent than you and you're constantly the most intelligent person in your firm, in your business, in your circle, then it's probably a pretty stupid circle.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan from Ryan's World on YouTube made $26 million last year and he's 9. The number one earner on YouTube is 9 years old. So we can definitely learn from people that are far, far, far younger than us. I just, I was interested in that. So a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are entrepreneurs, and I wanted to have you just spend a little time giving advice. What has served you the most? What skill sets? Is it networking? Is it personal development, surrounding yourself with the right people? Could you speak on just 2 or 3 things that you think have served you the most that you've either learned or that you've figured out?
Okay. So things that I've learned or figured out or things that are really key to kind of where I am now, it's definitely my network. But I don't like to say network. I like to say community. I always say that Brain Candy plays well with others. Same with Scrappy Capital. We play well with others. Part of our thing is we know that we're good at Brain Candy. We know we're good at herding cats. We're good at managing the projects. So we trust what we call our brain trust, a collective of freelancers and people that 1099 for us. We have this collection and we trust them to provide the highest quality of work and products for our clients. So I really rely on that community that I've built to not only help me in Brain Candy, but also when I'm working with startups for Scrappy Capital, I know I can rely on my network to provide advice or access to investors. I know I can rely on them because they know they can rely on me. I've built partnerships around town. And I think that's really, really important because so many people, I think off the bat, when they're starting, they can get kind of super competitive. And a lot of times entrepreneurs are competitive. It's great to have that drive. But don't let it be a downfall to you because so many people will get cocky, won't want to work with someone else, won't want to admit that maybe they're not the best at what they're doing or that they could learn something else from someone. And maybe you don't know it. Take a knee. That is one of the most attractive things to me as a venture capitalist, as an angel investor, as a founder. Someone who can take a knee and admit that their community is intelligent is huge. So I think community and having your community and really having those people to rely on is something that is key to me.
That's awesome. Now, I want to have you also talk a little bit about confidence because, it seems like what you're saying right here is have some humility and be humble. But at the same time, you said something earlier that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially when they want to become entrepreneurs, is having the confidence to ask for money or to ask for opportunity. I feel like a lot of people, when they're starting a business, they're just scared. They don't want to ask anything from anybody because they think that's weakness or, they think that makes them vulnerable. But you have a completely different take on that. And obviously in your household, they taught you very differently as well. So can you talk on that, just that confidence and just being willing to just ask for what you need?
Yeah, our household's kind of like balls to the walls. You just kind of did whatever you wanted. My parents were like, go outside. I grew up on a 53-acre tree farm and they're like, go outside and play. So I got kind of ballsy at a young age. My best friend and I, the one that I started businesses with, we used to climb like 50-foot spruce trees to the top and just like insane.
What's a tree farm? Is it just
like a Christmas tree, like a pine plantation, like a Christmas tree farm? Like
that's cool.
It was just road pines. So there were lots of very, very tall trees to climb. Don't recommend that. Not super safe. So they were always kind of like, just go for it. Just kind of take a leap of faith. And I think when you're asking for money, when you're asking for connections, or when you're putting yourself out there, whether it's personal or professional, I always tell people, what do you have to lose? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, said Wayne Gretzky, said Michael Scott. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be the one to put what you want out into the ether because, and I read this the other day, humans aren't mind readers.
Right.
You walk into a room of people that might be able to help you and might be able to connect with you, but they don't know that they can help you because you haven't asked for their help. So you must first ask in order to get anything back. And I think that it's important to not be scared because what do you have to lose? If you ask someone, they say no. If you asked whatever you're asking for in a professional, in a humble, in a respectful and mature manner, again, whether it's professional or personal, what do you have to lose? If you're approaching the situation with a good heart and good intentions, just ask.
Absolutely. Now, have you had to deal with a lot of rejection, like in your days as an entrepreneur?
Yes.
Have you been told just no straight out?
Yes. And I've interestingly lost respect for people who I've seen just kind of flat out no people. And I think every entrepreneur runs into it.
That's right.
This morning, for example, I had a meeting with a woman and she reached out to me, a woman that I have admired her work and her partner's work for a very long time. Ecstatic, fangirled even, I'll admit it. She reached out to me after an event and a keynote that I had given a few months ago and wanted to sit down with me to learn more about my company and my clients and possibly share a clientele because she does something similar to me and helps more in business. And so there was potential for us to share clients. 4 years ago, I was at Billboard touring and I tried to get a meeting with her and her partner. I couldn't. There wasn't time. I didn't know anyone that could get me pull. The slots had already been filled. Their small round table was busy. It was so far out of my league. And then fast forward 4 years later, I'm having a woman with this coffee and she's telling me she's excited to send clients my way.
Did you have any like little hidden animosity there? Like it's like ha 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 ha.
Not
I'm kidding.
Not at all, because the reason why we had never connected before was not because they were, I'm too good for you.
Right.
Not at all. The reason why we never got to connect was because they were so amazing and so admirable I was too small of a fish.
Right.
And instead of having animosity towards it, instead of being like, well, they wouldn't let me, like, nah, they wouldn't let me sit with their table because I wasn't wearing pink and it was Wednesday. No, I go, okay, I need to work harder. I need to bust my ass for the next 4 years. And if I do, maybe, just maybe, she's going to be reaching out to me. And sure as shit, 4 years later, after kicking ass, after sleepless nights, working on equity and just doing everything and anything that I could to further my career, here we are. And so, yeah, I've dealt with rejection and I've come back from that rejection as well.
That's awesome. Now, audience, remember, this guest today, Ayla, is 25 years old, not 35, not 45. She is 25 years old talking like this. I think that's a really incredible mindset. And, just on the note of rejection, I was interviewing a gentleman maybe like 3 months ago, and it was really cool. He had built this $30 million a year company that's just thriving. And I asked him the same question. I was like, how do you feel, or what's like your perspective on rejection? He said something that was really cool. He's like, just have a child's mindset. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, children don't take no personally.
I love that.
They don't ever stop. They have a curious mindset.
Yes.
And if you tell them no means absolutely nothing to a child. They keep going. They're persistent. It's like, and it's through your environment that you start learning to fear no, and you start losing your curiosity, and you replace it with being judgmental. And I just thought that was so fascinating. And you basically said it. It's just in just a different way. I just thought that was really cool.
I think it's really important. So I volunteer teach for Junior Achievement, which shout out to Junior Achievement and any entrepreneur that's out there that wants to do volunteer work. It's a nonprofit that's nationwide. I'm a Junior Achievement alum, and they teach entrepreneurial skills similar to the schools that you were just talking about. They teach entrepreneurial skills to kids of all ages. I've taught kids as young as third grade on up to high schoolers. And it's always so interesting to see the mindset and how these children go about solving these entrepreneurial problems that we put in front of them. Because sometimes they blow my mind and they'll solve something in a way that technically by the book is wrong. And they'll be like, well, is this right, Miss A? They always come and say, they're so sweet. They'll be like, is this right, Miss A? And I'll be like, well, no, but yes, that is beautiful because they have such their minds are untainted and yes, approaching it with that curiosity, with that childlike mindset, that is how you innovate. Right. That is how you disrupt. If you do everything the same as everyone else has done, and if you don't have that childlike mindset to explore, you're never going to innovate. And that's how you create a successful startup, is by innovating and disrupting something.
That's awesome. Yeah, yesterday I was listening to an interview by the founder of Skillshare, and he went to Berkeley and he was talking about his first day as an entrepreneur in class, and the professor literally like walks into the class, shuts the door, and he's like, your first project is gum, and then walks out. And that was it. And it was just fascinating to see what everybody did. Like some people built these models of gum, or some people try to create their own flavor and brand of bubble gum. But, he did that on purpose to teach people to be innovative, creative, to just take something so simple. He gave them the smallest bit of direction and let people go from there. And I thought that was really, really, really fascinating. So a mentor of mine shared with me a long time ago, he said, John, the difference between successful and unsuccessful people are the way they think and the way they spend their spare time. And so what do you do with your spare time? What do you do, during the day? What's kind of your daily method of operation, and what do you do for fun?
So I was a film major and I'm a film junkie. So I watch a decent amount of...
What's your favorite movie?
Ooh.
I know that's hard. Maybe one of your favorite movies.
Okay. So my favorite movie is Gosford's Park. Essentially it's like Clue in a movie. It's a decent amount of the cast from Downton Abbey and everything, but it was released in 2001. It's my favorite movie of all time. I listen to the soundtrack at least once a week. It's fantastic, set in 1920 England. Highly recommend. I watch a lot of movies and a lot of film and television, which I think is great. There are several very famous directors that wake up every morning and watch a movie with their breakfast to keep fresh with different innovative directing, cutting styles like that. And I'm an avid hiker. I hike a lot. I actually run trails around Nashville. We have a lot of great different parks around here. So that is a way for me to relieve stress.
70 degrees in January doesn't hurt either.
Yes. Part of the reason why I left Wisconsin, because it's not snowing, I can always go outside and run the trails. I run trails a lot. And as I mentioned before, I love to cook. So I spend a lot of time in my kitchen, which I just renovated, and I'm so thankful. Cooking everything, always baking, a lot of old family recipes, things like that. So that's
now, did your family come from part of Europe or?
Yes, my family is primarily German, Irish, and Belgian. So I grew up in a very small area of Wisconsin that is extremely Belgian influenced. I grew up with a lot of foods that I'm now realizing since moving down to the South are not foods here. No one knows what booyah is. No one knows what pasties are.
Here it's hush puppies.
Yeah, it's hush puppies
meat and three.
And fried chicken. And this Christmas, I had to go through hell and high water to get beef kidney lard suet to make our family recipe of pasties.
Wait. Beef, kidney, lard. What was that?
Sorry, it's beef kidney suet. So it's a fat that is found in beef kidneys, and it's used in old Welsh and Cornish recipes. And every Christmas Eve, our family would make pasties. So this Christmas, I hosted my family here in Nashville for the first time, and we all made pasties on New Year's Eve. And we used suet that came from Knoxville. I had to get it essentially imported to Nashville from Knoxville.
That's
yes.
The things you learn about recipes. I literally I think it was less than 10 years ago, I learned that Jell-O is made from gelatin, which is like the gelatin in between horse hoofs. And
That's not always vegan. No.
I was like, wait, what? What is this powder made out of that tastes so delicious that there's always room for? No. Just, you never know. But it tastes so good. It's incredible. So you like to hike. Are you an avid reader, which it seems like from your library?
Yes. I love to read both fiction and nonfiction. Fun fact, was one class away from a folklore minor in undergrad as well. Digital studies, entrepreneurship, and folklore. That would have been the trifecta. But they wouldn't let me take the freshman intro class as a senior. I had accidentally accumulated the certificate, and they wouldn't let me take the 100 level class to get the certificate. Long story. So I read a lot of Tolkien, a lot of Robert Jordan, a lot of anything kind of that is now in that popular Game of Thrones, shall we say, realm.
I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan.
Of what?
Game of Thrones.
Of Game of Thrones, except for season 8, right? Yeah.
I actually liked it, believe it or not. And
everyone just stopped listening. No, I go deep when it comes to Lord of the Rings. Like I've read the Silmarillion and stuff. So yes, avid reader. I'm the weirdo that loves Beowulf. Like read it annually. It's one of my favorite books.
Same here.
Oh.
Huge fan.
Well, heck yeah. So yes, love to read. And a lot of my clients they have very different ideas about what they want to do with their music projects. And a lot of times it kind of gets to be in that realm. So I get to read and draw inspiration from some of my favorite things.
That's awesome. So wrapping up, you did a keynote recently. Mm-hmm. And what did you talk about when you did that keynote?
In that keynote, I tried to give something back to the audience. It was a music moguls in the making speech. And I talked about the main pillars in my life: community, education, entrepreneurship, and of course, music, and how they kind of all came together. And I talked about how those four things to me foster innovation and are going to be the key for our future and for our industry,
right,
and for everything that I do on a daily basis. So that was the main thesis of that speech.
That's awesome. So as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave the audience with? Just any big lessons that you've learned over the years? Anything that, like, if you could go back in time and you're talking to yourself at 10 years old, you have 30 seconds and then you disappear. You know, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself that you think might save you some time or frustration later on in life?
Plan ahead, but live in the moment. A lot of people ask me how I got where I was. And I told you this earlier. I was a weirdo that wanted to build a home for myself when I was 5. I planned ahead. And I started saving, and I had these pipe dreams that I saved for and that I worked for, but I was enjoying the present. I was enjoying what I was doing and the projects that I was on in the present, but knowing that I was planting seeds for the future. So plant that acorn and stand where you planted that acorn and trust that that oak tree will grow. But enjoy the view while you're waiting for it to grow.
I love that. Like, we didn't script this, by the way, guys. That was really, really good. Kress, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm blown away by what you've done in 25 years. I can't imagine what you're going to do in the next 25 years. And if the audience is listening, as stealthy as you are, what's a great place to like follow you, connect? Is there anything? LinkedIn, maybe? Like,
yes, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn and Brain Candy, as in like your brain, what's in your skull, and then candy, like a lollipop. Management is where you'll find our socials and our different ways to access myself and my team here at Brain Candy.
Awesome. And they have a badass logo. So you'll see it once you look it up. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Make sure you keep an eye out for Ayla Kress. And if something she said in the episode resonated with you, don't be afraid to follow her, connect with her, and let her know how she impacted you. I personally will be making some very exciting announcements here really soon. Now that we are 20 episodes in and I have my rhythm, I have been thinking of a lot of ways that I can add more value to your life. You know, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, the audience, for listening to this episode and giving feedback. And I'm just going to be brutally honest. You know, the first 20 episodes, I was just trying to get through the interview. You know, I had a lot of successful people on. I was nervous. I'm going through and I'm writing all of my questions out, hoping I'm not sounding stupid, hoping we're not live in the interview and I say something that doesn't make sense, or I ask a question that gives me like a really crazy answer. You know, you may not know this unless you have a podcast, but it's a lot of nerve-wracking things that go into creating a really awesome episode. And yes, although you can edit some things out, you know, I don't have a background in editing or engineering, so I really try to get the episode perfect first go around. And so I feel that after 20 episodes, I've got a rhythm for most of it. And so now I can really focus on other things that I can do to create value. Now, don't get me wrong. I am always trying to make every episode better, have better, higher, more quality guests on, but not even just the guests. I'm trying to do a better job as a host to ask better questions, to have a better interview, to get more vulnerable and get more in depth to the really, really good stuff that can really help you guys with challenges and problems and things like that. And so as I strive to become a better host all around, I'm always looking for ways that I can just add more value, because at the end of the day, I'm interviewing incredible people and I'm learning a lot of things. I'm getting their resources. And as I research the guests, I'm finding out amazing things that I wish I had known while building my own businesses. And so I'm just figuring out how I can package some of this stuff together so that I can offer it to you guys and give it away so that you can have just more value and more just things that you can use to help move yourself further to your goal. So I'm super excited. I just want to say thank you so much for listening and following me on this journey, and I will see you next week.